Boom. What's up, Mortgage Coach and Trust Engine community? I am sitting down with two amazing mortgage professionals. They're not loan officers, they're mortgage advisors. They're producing branch leaders. Jason and Steve are going to tell a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to talk about how they're gaining market share and how they're winning by delivering advice in this market. So Jason, why don't you go first and just, let everybody know who you are, let everybody know what market you're in, and then we'll get into some best practices and some big ideas.
You got it. Thanks, Dave. Jason Marschall, we're with Prime Lending. We've been here for, it'll be 14 years this fall, 14 years in October. Steve and I have been business partners for most of that time. We've worked together for the better part of 20 years now. We're in Minnesota, just southwest of Minneapolis. We've got a main branch in Edina, and we've got 3 other satellites throughout the state. So our team is southern Minnesota to northern Minnesota.
What kind of production do you guys do with your team?
Gabby and I have been traditionally in the $50 to $60 million range. Last year was a little bit lower than that. The 2 years prior to that were on either side of 100 million. So we did have some good opportunities in 20 and 21. This year we're tracking somewhere in that 40 range year to date.
Great. Well, congrats. That's incredible success. And both Jason and Steve are Mortgage Coach Grandmasters. They're a team, and both have created over 1,000 TCAs. Steve, what about yourself?
Steve Gables, been with, like Jason said, Prime Lending, coming up on our 14-year anniversary. I think I checked on my profile for Mortgage Coach. I think we've been Mortgage Coach users for 12, 13 years. I thought it said either 2008 or 2010. So it's been part of what we do for a long time. And I would feel hamstrung without it. That is for certain. It definitely takes us it takes us from basically, the beginning to the end. I mean, I wouldn't, when it comes to showing people numbers or anything, I only use the Mortgage Coach to display numbers and prices and products and rates. That is my sole tool.
Well, I love how you guys have led, and you've helped a lot of loan officers both be inspired to adopt Mortgage Coach and to be educated how to do it. Now, you guys at Prime Lending have our full borrower intelligence platform. So you not only have these total cost analysis presentations, but you also have data signals, data alerts, so that you can be at the right place at the right time with your borrowers. How do you leverage that, those alerts and those signals?
So the boomerang alerts have been coming in. We've been on that stream for a couple of years now, and we just recently in the last few months opened up all of the alerts. So each morning we get alerts from the simple credit inquiries to the listing alerts, but now we've opened it up to life events. So each morning we've got a task list of folks to call, and I wrap it around a check-in call, an annual review more than anything, but knowing that something is going on in the background with these clients. So it's a good lead-in to stay in touch and continue that client for life philosophy that we have.
Yeah, now we've noticed that a lot of the cash out alerts are actually turning into purchases, where the family is selling the house, taking all the cash out. Have you noticed anything like that with your alerts, or anything, like if there was the thing that's helping you win the most business, which alert is that?
The cash out alerts are very important. I'm finding that the credit buildup, the spending hasn't stopped. So the revolving debt alerts have been a good lead in, and sometimes those do lead to simply selling their house, paying everything off, and moving on to something else. The credit inquiry alerts and the listing alerts are probably the most important that I see, but the cash out alerts are becoming a close third out there.
I don't know if you guys are doing this, but I'm hearing a lot of loan officers with the listing alerts that are creating one total cost analysis to go to the listing agent, and say, hey, I've got some strategies to help sell this home, and then another TCA to take to the seller of the home and say, hey, I got you. I have some ideas and strategies for this next home you guys are buying. One, what are your thoughts on that idea? And then two, how are you leveraging the listing alerts?
The listing alerts are a great lead in to the listing agents. The agents business is as slow as everybody right now. They're going through the same challenges as we are, especially with the inventories out there. So introducing ourselves to the listing side and showing opportunities out there is a tremendous opportunity right now. And we've converted a lot of those listing agents to now, buyer partners that we have and we work with on a regular basis. The ones that utilize and are responsive to the tools that we use, I feel are the most beneficial. So as we start to show these new tools, MortgageCoach and Sales Boomerang being the lead out there, those are the ones that are taking advantage of this market, instead of letting this market pass them up. I feel that the ones are doing business the old way and not utilizing these tech stack tools they're going to get left behind pretty quick. So this is a good opportunity for us, and we've been utilizing this, a couple different strategies, to convert different listing agents over to our buy side referral partners.
Love that, and I do think this is a unique market. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal today that really talks about the dynamics in this market, and it's just getting harder and harder for a fee worksheet loan officer to deliver the kind of advice and the kind of clarity that a consumer needs in this market. Hey, before we move on, Steve, anything you want to add to that before I start asking questions, specifically how you're going from price to advice and how you're training other loan officers to do that?
I'm really trying to train, the people we work with, that we manage, I'm really trying to teach them that, especially on the front end, I try to teach them that if you get a new lead, a prospect, when you tell them, they're pre-qualified, they're ready to buy a house, that's the first TCA I do from the get-go is when you have that conversation with the borrower where they think their budget is and their price point is, I want to create a TCA that gives them, 4 different options in different ranges, so I can really get them to have a feel for how much cash they're going to need for closing and where their payment's going to be, because especially if they need to, they're trying to determine if they can stretch their budget or not. I mean, I think they think they know what it is, but I think until they see the numbers, can they really appreciate how their payment and cash to close will change? And I think that initial TCA is perfect for illustrating that. And that really kind of that's the first step that leads to, several more TCAs as the process starts to move along.
Love that. What I'd love for you to do, Steve, is maybe get an example of a total cost analysis. Don't show it on the screen yet, but get one ready. And before we do that, I'm going to come back to you, Jason, because I want to do some scripting best practices when calling the alerts. And I recently interviewed Phil Jones. He's the author of Exactly What to Say. It's a book that's sold over 2 million copies, and a lot of those sales are to realtors. By the way, are you familiar with Exactly What to Say or Phil Jones?
I'm not.
I am not.
Good. Well, then when I share some best practices he shared, it will be new for you guys. But what are you doing? Are you guys the ones calling? And what are you saying when you call to kind of break the ice and create a good conversation?
I think a big part of that conversation starts the last time we did a loan. All of these alerts are coming from, past clients of ours. We don't have another database that we've built in here yet. I know we can, lean on other referral partners to use their databases, but we've got somewhere in the tune of 2,000 records in our personal database. I've been making it a habit of letting those clients know, when we're going to talk next. That might be a month from closing. It might be 6 months from closing. It might be a year from closing, but to let them know they're stuck with us as long as they'll have us. So we're not a transactional lender. We're not a transaction shop. We're gonna be calling them on different, different times when we feel that there might be an opportunity, or if it's just a check-in, or if it's on an annual review. So when we do make those calls, when these alerts pop up, they're not blindsided by us, and why are you calling me? And, how did you know my credit was looked at? And, I feel it's a softer call. There are some that, that might go a little bit longer without, having a conversation with us. But we do our best to stay in front of them, among a multiple, communication streams out there. So when we do call, it's a softer call.
So let me show you, and this is not only what Phil recommended, but there's a number of mortgage coaches that have adopted this framework, and it's called the OFQ framework. O stands for opening, be positive with a curious attitude, hit a fact, say something that, is mutually agreeable, and question and must be easy to answer. So like, this is an example of how that would translate into an equity alert. Like, hi, my name is Dave Savage with Trust Engine. We helped you buy your home at XYZ Street. Are you still enjoying your home? Like, that's a fact. And it's a question that is just couldn't get easier. Like, it gets them saying yes. And then something like, I'm checking in with you because at this point in homeownership, people usually find themselves in one of three situations. They've outgrown the home, they want to pay off the home loan faster, or they want to tap equity and other liabilities to make investments. Which are you? What are your thoughts on that framework?
I like it. I think it keeps that advice. It keeps us in front of their best interests. And it gets them to respond. It gets their input, which is a big part of using this tool. It engages the customer, the clients, into the decision process. So it puts you on the same platform.
Yeah. And I really like it because it also just helps drive conversations, like if it was a debt consolidation alert, this would be a very easy conversation. It would really help open the conversation. So anyways, well, let's get into some specific advice, situations, and stories. What's a typical example of where you pivot a conversation where a loan officer would be typically just delivering price? Hey, here's your rate, here's your payment, here's your cash to close, and you guys are delivering advice. What would be an example of that in the marketplace today? And whichever one of you wants to answer that question. I
would start with the last few years. It's really helped using the TCAs to help help borrowers win deals. I think people get in their heads, they get stuck on what they think they can afford, what their budget is, and especially when they've had to stretch a little bit and go over the list price. I think using that TCA to show them what they think they want to offer, and then showing, 3 or 4 more examples if they go up in price, maybe in $10,000 increments, how much does their payment really change? So then it gets them comfortable with maybe offering a little more because they understand that their payment really doesn't change that much. And that's been really helpful in helping people win deals. I think including the realtors on that conversation. I now have realtors who will reach out to me and ask me if I can send them they call it the presentation thingy. Like, hey, could you send one of those presentation thingies to my clients so they can see what it would look like? And so now they're asking me for them, and I think that's been, that's great. That's what I want.
Love that. Jason, anything you want to add to that?
A big part of it is shifting the mindset away from rate. People call up and say, I'm looking at this house, I want to put 10% down, and I know there's going to be but what's your rate? And I say, you pick whatever rate you want. If you want it at 0, you can pay cash for the house, but if we want to finance it, then we're going to look at a range. And I talk about ranges a lot, because until you get to the point that you're going to lock on a specific house and a specific timeline, I'll share our MBS quote line throughout the day and show them what a roller coaster it's been in the bond market. So we can look at a range of rates, and that range is going to carry lower upfront costs, or it's going to show an investment into the lower rate for the benefit of that lower interest expense. So once we start to pull that curtain back, I think it takes some of the, the rate conversation out of the decisioning, and it really engages that client into, let's pick the one that makes the most sense. Is it payment? Is it rate? Is it cash to close? Let's find a good plan, to deliver that.
Yeah, and kind of the science of selling that's at play when you do that is that authorship is ownership. When people feel like, hey, I was involved in picking the strategy and picking the rate, they own it. And so it's like, there's this quote we have, like when they pick the option, you give them multiple options, they've picked the loan officer. They feel empowered. They feel as though they got transparency around different rates. And they're also not looking at you as like, oh, this is the high rate, low cost LO versus the low rate, high cost. They see you as like, hey, this person can get me the high or the low rate. Do you have any examples of that you could show on your screen right now? It'd be great to just see an example. Sometimes I find nuances in how different loan officers create TCAs, but I would say anyone listening to this is like, I've interviewed so many top producers that do this. They always help consumers know that, you can get a variety of different rates from me at different costs. And this is just a standard. In today's market, every loan officer should be having this conversation with the majority of your buyers.
So this is built for somebody just a few days ago. And I always tell them, number one, it doesn't matter to me what rate you choose. They sometimes feel that if we charge a higher rate, we're getting paid a higher compensation and we're trying to lean that direction. I clear that air immediately. We can grab the highest rate, we can grab the lowest rate, whatever one makes the most sense for you is what's gonna land on our decision here. But I always start with a lower cost. I use the term good rate, lower rate, and low rate. So I say we've got room for 4 comparisons on this tool, and we're going to use this tool throughout the process. Whether it's comparing purchase prices, but ultimately we're going to get down to a rate comparison like we see here. So we can see that this one, it's not a big loan, but it moves their payment $27 per eighth in rate. We can see that the total savings, I always start with 5 years. But the total savings, is better on the low rate. I always go through the exercise of saying, if you're going to pay this off or sell this house in the short term, it dynamically changes. That's a big wow factor for them. If I'm not meeting with them in person, they see this shift on their screen. And then we start to look at different timelines in which the right side of that screen will catch up as a best option. With that being said, I can always say that the low rate at some point is going to be best, but we will always look at their cash to close situation. This one in particular took the low cost. They didn't have a lot of money to put down, even though the low rate wasn't exorbitantly higher. They wanted to save that cash up front. They know they're going to be in the house for some period of time, but they may not be in this loan for some period of time, longer than, we can look at something in the future. So that's the conversation I ultimately end up with them. And I've learned to not assume, what direction makes the most sense, because it's different for everybody. And that conversation, bringing them into that decision is what wins deals. It builds that trust, it builds that respect on the advice that we're giving.
Yeah. And then when it makes sense, sometimes you could take, like the lowest rate is $80.77 less. You could show that as a prepayment. Hey, what if you took that $87 and you prepaid the mortgage? How many years faster would you pay off the loan? Do you ever do that for consumers?
Yep.
Huh?
Yep. Yes, we do. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially on refinances. Yeah. Use the reinvestment.
But just real quick, just to show this feature for everyone watching, just go to the lowest rate on the far right and put in the monthly savings, the $161 per month. And
I went the other way on that one, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah, I know you did. I was helping you out. It's all good, man. And then let's scroll down and look at that, guys. At 27 years, the home would be paid off. Now, again, it's all about going from price to advice. And this is what an advisor does. They help a consumer see their options. Do you ever do any down payment options? You know, like, hey, here's 5%, 10%, 20% down payment?
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, every time, usually when it's once you get a contract, that's when that's usually the next, evolution is okay, now we got a house, let's talk about different down payment options. And I want to show them, they may have in their mind, they want to put more money down, but when you illustrate to them how cheap mortgage insurance can be and, how lower down they can hang on to some of their money, whether or not they need to maybe they want to make some improvements to the house that need to, they want to buy some things. So always show them 4 different options for down payment.
Yeah. And for anyone listening to this, guys, if you want to be an advisor, interest rate options, required skill for all mortgage coaches, down payment options, required skill for all loan officers. And go back to the screen before, like close this out. I want you to notice where it says long-term type of chart, put in net worth. Now, in this particular scenario, it's not going to show a real difference because it's the same amount, but it's based off 4%. But when you start doing down payment options and like, hey, let's say you put the 5% down and invested the difference, right now treasuries are at 4 and some change, so most people are putting in 4 to 10. This net worth really starts showing a difference. And in today's market where there's a lot of consumers that are, they feel landlocked, household hostage, they've got a 2 or a 3% rate. They don't want to move up. When you start showing the net worth, like, hey, you know what? Move it up to this bigger home. Look what this does to your net worth over 5 to 10 years. And then let's say they are in a position to rent it out and rent it out at some type of a, cash flow positive. You could take that cash flow positive and put it in the asset accumulation field. And you can really start helping families make educated, transparent decisions on, are they landlocked or can they move up and buy that bigger home? So I think we're going to see more TCAs like that in the coming weeks and months. What are your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
One of my biggest referral sources are financial advisors. I came from that world before I got into the mortgage business. I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker. So I was going down that path, but I've stayed in touch and built relationships with a lot of FAs. And I utilize this tool, very heavily with them, and I always bring them into the decisioning fact of the, does it make sense to put more money down? Does it make sense to pay cash for the house? Does it make sense to grab the low rate, the high rate? So it builds a layer of trust with these clients that, we've got 2 people moving in the same direction. And yes, I do use that total net worth with them, to show those differences, the down payment, the monthly payment, and keeping more investable money out there in the marketplace is usually a decision that people lean towards.
Yeah, the higher rates have actually led to some refinances. Speaking of the financial part of it, when people have margin accounts and those rates are now higher than, even though refinance rates aren't great, the margin account rates are much higher. And we've had a number of people coming to us saying, hey, I want to refinance because I want to pay off my margin line, and the rate on that's 8, 9, 10%. And I understand rates aren't, refinance rates aren't great, but that's much better than the margin line I have right now.
Well, if you can stop sharing your screen real quick, I want to wrap up with a couple scripts. A few more of the scripts that came from my interview with Phil Jones was how to position yourself at the point of sale. And this was some fine tuning we did where Phil said, position yourself as our continued advice helps you build wealth faster with real estate by helping you make smarter mortgage decisions. And your team, which is basically our team, will proactively coach you over time to ensure you always have the best mortgage to achieve your goals. And then he has this, is it important for you to have a long-term strategic advice, or are you just looking for the short-term cheapest rate? Now, I don't know, first of all, what are your thoughts on, positioning yourself this way? And then, finding out, do we have a grinder? Or do we have someone that really appreciates strategic advice? Any thoughts on this?
I like it. I present that and people, getting back to the rate question, I think at the end of the day, they want to know that they're not being taken advantage of. I always say we're going to land somewhere in the middle of the rate range. If you shop long and hard enough, you're going to find somebody to do it cheaper, but ultimately you're going to get what you pay for, when it comes to that transaction and to the advice. So once they realize that, they know we're not the highest. They know we're not taking advantage of them by upselling the rate and making more money. They know that we've got their best interest in mind on delivering us. And once we bring them into that, that sphere, they don't shop anymore. They trust, they respect our advice, and we move on with the transaction.
Love it. So kind of some closing thoughts for everyone is this is from today. This was a Wall Street Journal article today. And I'm using the terms household hostage and accidental landlords that I got from a Fortune magazine article a couple of weeks ago. But in an article like that, in a market like this, being a fee worksheet loan officer, showing up and delivering a consumer with a fee worksheet, it really is like showing up to a gunfight with knife. It's never been more important for everyone to really master how to have this rate conversation, how to have the down payment option conversation. Another really popular TCA we're seeing right now, I'm wondering if you guys are doing this, is showing a couple options, maybe like a seller buy down or a 2-1 buy down, and then also showing like date the rate. Like MBA is predicting rates at 4.5 by next year. You can always buy now and refi later. Is this a TCA or anything that you're doing like this?
A little bit,
but it's been on my radar. I mean, that's part of the whole discussion we've been having right now as far as picking a rate is like, the break-even analysis is very helpful because you want to be having the, if you have the discussion with the client, like, do you believe there's going to be a refinance opportunity, say within the next 2 years? And if you believe that, and we create our TCAs with that break-even analysis, based on a given amount of months, that it's going to give us the direction on what rate we want to choose, and then, that's setting us up for that next refinance. But the, date the rate, marry the house is great. That's the next evolution of the TCA. You can, even before you have an opportunity to refinance, you could be creating those TCAs to say, hey, here's what it looks like. You might be at 6, but what if the rate's at 5? What if the rate's at 4? You can already illustrate to them what kind of savings they're going to have, or maybe even term reduction, how you could go from a 30-year to a 20-year, with that drop in rate and still be, in a similar payment.
I love it. So my last questions, gentlemen, are, first of all, I have 2 questions. One, how long does it create each of you? How long does it take each of you to create a TCA? Like, how many minutes does it take you to do it?
3.
3? Okay.
And to be accurate,
what about you? What about you, Scott?
I take a little bit longer. I'm pretty diligent about my rates and my, I want to get the fees and everything very, but I say no more than 10 to 15 minutes. If I really just make sure I feel like everything is dialed in.
Yeah, and that includes you pricing it. Like, it's not just in Mortgage
all
Coach.
Fees broken out.
You're doing a lot of work.
Discount. Prepaids, everything. I want it in there. I want everything illustrated.
Well, I guess the point I want to make, because one of the things that gets a lot of people in the way of using Mortgage Coach is that, it takes too long. And I want to make sure, like, the actual time to create a TCA, I always say, is 5 minutes or less. Now, when it comes to pricing a loan and going to different places and things like that, takes time, but you got to do that even if you were delivering a fee worksheet. It's going to take some time. So is it fair to say the incremental time of using Mortgage Coach is 5 minutes or less for you, or is it more?
Less for me. And like you said, you're building this file already. Our LOS is run through Blue Sage. So you've already got the fees built, you've got the loan priced, you've got your range of rates, and we can import it directly from our LOS into Mortgage Coach, to build, the clients, the rates. And even if they're sitting in front of me, I can tap this out in, a few minutes just to show them, here's the tool that we're going to use to do this analysis. And going back to your last comment, Dave, is, that that gives us more ammunition to talk about what our future conversations are gonna be. And I think that that's a big part of that initial conversation, you know. We're gonna do this transaction, but here's what we're gonna look at in the future. You know, you're stuck with us for as long as you'll have us. Here's what we're gonna talk about, whether it's a lower rate opportunity. Here's what that can look like for your payment. I always lead with, let's help you pay it off faster. You know, can we get down to a 20-year term faster than you will naturally get there? Investing a little bit of cost, but showing what that, you know, what that analysis could look like. So those are the future, you know, scenarios that I build up front. You know, I don't spend as much time on those because those are a long, you know, an annual review or a future conversation, but I always bring that up in the beginning so they know that they're going to hear from us in the future.
So let's net this out with two scripts. I'm gonna ask you both the same question. Let's just go with you, Jason, because it seems top of mind for you. But what is the actual, like in a minute or less, when you position this mortgage coach presentation with the borrower, you know, what is, or you're positioning yourself uniquely as an advisor, what does that scripting sound like? Like I showed you what Phil Jones, you know, recommends, but what are you actually saying to position it?
So when we have a new client that comes in and we sit down, I try to meet with our clients as much as possible. So we sit down and we go through the credit report and the purchase price scenario, but I show them mortgage coach and we build that right in front of each other. So we build it together and I say, we're at the top of the funnel right now, you know, whether they found a property or if they're simply looking for a property, you know, this is going to start very high level in a purchase price range to get them an idea where their payments, their down payments are going to be. Let's start to look at what those down payment options are from 3 to 5% all the way down to 25%. We start to narrow that funnel. Now we've found a house. We're going to buy this house on 123 Main Street in Edina, Minnesota. Here's your down payment desire. Here's your purchase price. Let's start to look at those rates. So I get down further and further into the funnel. At that point, I say, the rates are what they are. We can't control where rates are today. We can pick whichever rate that we want, but we can't control what the bond market's doing. So let's pick something that's got a relatively reasonable break even based on your timeline. And then we'll flip over and we'll build a quick, a TCA for what that future might look like. If rates stay the same, if they get worse, you're in great shape. We'll kick this down the road and talk a year from that point in the future. But if rates are better, you know, here's our options. Here's what I could do to your payment. Here's what I could do to your term, and show them what these future analysis are going to bring. So they're expecting that at some point. So it helps us to maintain that relationship for a longer period of time.
Love it. Love it. And Steve, what is your script? What does it sound like?
I mean, I don't have I've been doing this so long and every client's just a little bit different. So my script is not, it changes every time based on the client, what their needs are, where they're at in their life, you know, first time home buyers, move up buyers, whatever the case may be. So I think it's probably based on when I'm talking to my clients, it'll drive me a certain direction because I'm asking them what kind of information they want to see. You know, most importantly, like you said, a fee sheet. I mean, it's a challenge to me to never send a fee sheet to anybody. Jason and I talked about it. I don't think I sent one to anybody last year. That's like part of my DNA. You don't provide those to people. I would say, you know, Mortgage Coach really, you know, I want to create connections with the people, and the Mortgage Coach is the glue. It's the glue for everything. So I use Mortgage Coach as a way to stick to people, and I look at Mortgage Coach as my glue, and I use it for everything. Whether or not I want them to know that this is the advice, and I'm going to give them, if they have needs, they want information, I'm going to use Mortgage Coach to provide them that.
Oh, we lost your sound, Dave. There you go.
Yeah, no, I had it on mute, but I love it. This has been an incredible conversation. Either one of you have any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think we covered a lot of good stuff. Yeah, so I feel that keeping people in that conversation and the decisioning is probably the biggest piece that we help to deliver out there. So it's more of a partnership on, you know, getting through this transaction and moving on to the next one.
Well, guys, there is an advice revolution taking place in mortgage and housing. I mean, it's never been more important for local referral-based mortgage professionals to deliver advice, not price, and you guys are leading the charge. So super grateful for all the great leadership you bring at Prime Lending, and then this is at our YouTube channel. So you're really helping to inspire and educate people beyond just, you know, your company. Would you mind sharing a link to one that it doesn't have to be that exact rate TCA, but I'd love a down payment TCA and a rate TCA, so that, you know, in the description of this video, if you're watching this on YouTube, people have actual examples of both a rate TCA and a down payment TCA. You cool with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, if you got value from this and you're watching this, give it a like on whatever social media platform you're watching it at, and share it with other loan officers that you want to see gain market share, you know, because you got to deliver advice, not price. This is a wrap. Take care, everybody. And thanks again, gentlemen.
Thank you.